Hello and welcome to this video, which is a portion of the annual report for Abingdon Episcopal Church for the year 2020. Throughout the year 2020, as we faced pandemic, we focused on being community. This series of conversations are by members of our community as we focus on the ministries that we did. As we think back to when the church was founded, as we read in the book of Acts, there are many characteristics which define the church. As we find ourselves in a new situation, we too had to ask ourselves, what are we being as we learn to be the church? As the early church did, they had to learn. As we have had to do in this pandemic, we have had to learn. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with members of Abingdon Church as we explore how we learned and affirmed our opportunity to be the church God has called us to be. Well, thank y'all for joining me in this conversation about how we care for each other. As I was getting ready for the annual meeting for our report on the state of the parish, I began to ask myself the question, like, where's Abingdon been the church in 2020? And I went back to the book of Acts and I looked at how the church was at the very beginning of Christianity. And there I saw that one of the things they did, no surprise to us, was they cared for the widows, the orphans, the sick, the needy, in ways of caring, compassion. And what we do in the Pastoral Care Committee is do those very things. And so I thought I would just open up the conversation for us to sort of share our thoughts on how Abingdon has been the church in the area of caring for each other. And have y'all join us. And Helen, I'm going to start with you because you're the newest member of the Pastoral Care Committee. And sometimes my experience is the newest person in the room sometimes comes in and asks the questions the rest of us have forgotten about. And so I'm not that you have any questions, but as a new person, what are your observations of the ways that we have been caring for people in 2020?
Well, I think it's fabulous, and I've been a recipient of a lot of this over the years, the many years, and I did a lot of soul searching this year, had time to do that, about what I wanted to give back to the church. And one of the things that I love to do is arrange flowers, and I feel very comfortable around people that are sick. And so I thought, pastoral care. So I started investigating it, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. And I've really enjoyed the response from the people when we take flowers. And it's an opportunity to visit with them and listen to them and spread some joy. So I think it's a wonderful mission. And I'm hearing that from the people that I've spoken with, that they think that's one of the best things that Abingdon does for outreach. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to be on the committee.
Well, and Joanne, you've been on the committee the longest of anybody here, right. And you've seen things. So what are your thoughts about this ministry that we're doing?
Well, again, I think we get as much out of it as the recipients because they're so thankful and just really upbeat when when we could take time to visit. And like I said, they'll even call if we leave something on the doorstep. They'll call later because to say thank you, but I think it's still a way to touch base with somebody.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and we've left a lot of flowers on doorsteps this
year.
Right. And yeah, as I think back on 2020, it seems like we haven't had as many people in the hospital that at least we could go see. So a lot of surgeries were canceled because keeping the hospitals open, and so a lot of people didn't have elective surgeries, and those that did, of course, they would go in and go out so quickly that we often didn't take flowers to hospitals, and our nursing homes would stop us at the door. Flowers would get in, but it was and a lot of those conversations were taking place on telephone and rather than at the door, just because of how things were. But they were still taking place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Nancy, you what do you want to add to our conversation?
Well, it's one of my favorite committees to be on, and we have flowers every week. in the church, and it's just a good way to reach out to everybody. And we've given out hundreds and hundreds of arrangements this year, and I just love arranging flowers, so it's a win-win for me. I really enjoy it. So
Well, there's one thing that we did this year that was, I think we've done it in the past, but it's certainly more important this year, is we have certain seasons of liturgical year where we don't have flowers. Advent being one, we're coming up on Lent here. And so those who have birthdays in Advent know what we did, but those who don't have birthdays in Advent may not be aware of what we did. So Nancy, why don't you talk about that?
well, usually we bring flowers. We want to make sure everybody gets flowers, and if we have to go out and get them, I don't mind. So
either.
we'll,
I guess what I was referring to is we did our Advent deliveries before Advent.
right.
Yeah, and we designed a new card so that, we'd say, we know your birthday is not for several weeks, but we're not going to have flowers on the altar then. And so,
Yeah, it worked.
And a lot of the flowers came from the churchyard this year.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Thanks to Shan. Yeah, that was great. We had flowers all summer.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
yeah, that was a good way because with the pandemic, so many people spent time in their yards because, you couldn't go to a movie or out to dinner or travel. So just a lot of people spent time outside, and the churchyard had a lot of blossoms. And so we were able to sort of share that connection with the church as well.
I didn't realize, being a new person, that we did the baskets at Christmas time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for the shut-ins. I thought that was fabulous.
But talk about that a little bit, because if you're not a shut-in, you may not be aware that we do that. So Helen, just explain what that was for people watching.
Well, actually, it was new to me, but it was a well-oiled machine. Everything was lined up on the tables, and we had, I collected a lot of baskets, and we had some at the church, and we filled them with beautiful tissue paper and fruits and candies, and wrapped them up and delivered them. And I just thought that was a fabulous idea. And I don't know if you do anything for Easter. You probably don't. I don't know. Any
We
other
haven't in
time?
the past.
We haven't in the past, but that may be a change for us this year. It's we do take Easter lilies and poinsettias after Christmas and Easter.
Okay. Yeah.
To people, and so we try to.
Yeah, but that was a lot of fun, and I'm sure it was meaningful
Mm-hmm.
to those that received them.
Yeah, and I just should say that, and Nancy, you do this a lot of times because you have the better handwriting, and sometimes Helen does it. But if we can't take flowers to you, if we don't have enough, if you're out of the area, maybe if you're a certain young child that may not appreciate flower arrangement, we send cards to people, and so we do try to connect. One thing that's been interesting for birthdays this year is, I don't know if y'all do this, but I've been calling a lot of people or texting them on their birthday. So in a typical year, I would see them at the altar rail. I give them a little blessing. Not doing that in 2020, and so I've been sort of using phone and to text or call people and just having good conversations that way, just connecting. It's recognizing the humanity of things. So Joanne, you talked about how much we get out of this ministry. We give things, but we get a lot more back. A lot of people may not be aware that one thing we do is that we try to learn as well. And so who wants
You picked a good one.
So Joanne, what are we trying to learn this year?
Put me on the spot. Well, we have gone through 3 or 4 books. And
Over
when
the
I
years,
say gone through, but we've tried to learn how to talk with people, listen to people mostly, I think. And, some of the books have been more research and psychological, and all that's important, but I think I get the most out of the ones that show real life, show different circumstances that have taken place, and I think you can learn from that. So.
Joanne's being very kind because I'm usually the one that picks some more research psychological books, and y'all just put up with me.
I can't wait.
Well, but Yeah, and this year was one where it didn't make sense for us to do that with distancing and mask and everything. And so we said, let's just put that on hold for a little bit for a year
Or
we'll
two.
re-engage with part two.
Or two.
But just, like all good ministers, you do the work, and then you also sort of work on yourself as well to say,
Right.
how am I honing the gift that I am, that God has given me, so I can be
Right.
that servant I'm called to be. Yeah, it's a fun conversation. Anybody want to add anything else? We don't have to go any longer. Any final thoughts on how we connect to people, how we're planning on doing that in 2021?
Well, I hope we just continue. And if we can find another avenue, I'm all for that too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And we look for suggestions from people in the congregation to help us improve what we do.
Mhm.
And I think one thing, a lot of times we will deliver to people that aren't members of Abingdon, but have a relationship, a family relationship. And I think that brings people in too. I mean, into knowing what Abingdon is about.
Right.
I think so. And I mean, where do you stop sharing God's love and grace? Do you stop at this circle or this circle or this circle? Because I think whenever we try to draw a circle and say, well, God's here, we have to recognize that God's on the outside of the circle. And so we keep on caring for those in the congregation, but also reaching out to others, that, a friend of a friend who has going through a hard thing, either a card or a flower or something, just to know God cares for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time and for your ministry, and I'll put this with everything else in your report, and thank you for all your ministry you do for Abingdon to help us connect and be the church in 2020 and beyond.
Thank you for doing all.
leading us.
Yeah,
Thank
really.
you.
You've been working hard.
And we all have. Thank you for watching this conversation with members of Abingdon Church as we've explored how the church has been the church in 2020. There are a series of 8 videos that comprise this annual report. Hope you'll watch them all. And please join us for worship, service, and faith. Abingdon Church.